Good morning. We're in Genesis 45, part 2. Genesis 45, part 2. We're in verse 16. And the fame thereof was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brethren are come, and it pleased Pharaoh well, and his servants. Yep. That's how it is. And that's the image to me, all of, when we come, the Lord is happy. God is happy. God is happy when we come. All right. That's just basic. Okay. And 17, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, say unto thy brethren, this do ye, lade your beasts, and go, get you unto the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households, and come unto me, and I will give you the good of the land of Egypt, and ye shall eat the fat of the land. Now, 19, thou art commanded, this do ye, take you wagons out of the land of Egypt for your little ones, and for your wives, and bring your father, and come. Also, regard not your stuff, for the good of all the land of Egypt is yours. And this to me is basically an image of a God Christ image. He's basically saying, hey, go do what Christ says. Everything's been provided for. Don't worry about nothing else. Stop, drop, and roll. Get out of there. That's what that looks like to me. So, I'm not saying that is as usual, but okay. Okay. Also, regard not your stuff. All right. Verse 21. Genesis 45, verse 21. Then the children of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the commandment of Pharaoh, and gave them provision for the way. Okay, so this is Pharaoh hears about Joseph and how the story and everything, and he basically tells Joseph, hey man, because we know they went into slavery and stuff after, but I don't think that wasn't the initial motive. There was another Pharaoh when all that happened. So if I'm not mistaken, could be wrong. I'm gonna look into it. And I just want to throw out there, guys, that okay, last night I'm on the live, and I told my live, I said, hey man, show me one video where, where somebody is openly trying to say that the Bible is not authentic or verifiable against an academic, a scholar that actually knows what they're talking about. Where do you see a Bible where they're actually winning in a debate against that? Because my point is that it's not really out there. Yeah, you'll see somebody saying stuff about stuff. You'll see somebody saying stuff, but I don't believe there's a video out there. If there is, there's very few where there's actually somebody that's tearing down the authenticity of the Bible and the validity of the Bible, that's actually standing in opposition. Yeah, you're going to have videos that are solo and documentaries. You're going to have stuff like that, but you're not going to see it in an open debate, because that's where you know the truth is, when it's actually in a challenge against somebody. I said, show me one of those videos, because that's my new position, guys. They're not really out there. So he brings up, I said, okay. He said, what about the video between Bill Nye and this other guy, Ken Ham, I think? I said, yeah, I saw that a while back. It's like literally the most weakest debate ever. And they're not even talking about really Bible authenticity. They're talking about something within the Bible. Okay, Noah's Ark, creation versus evolution. That was the main topic. It wasn't Bible authenticity. Okay. I said, okay, fair enough. I see what you're saying. All right. He said, what about the Exodus? He said, there's really no proof. He said, there's really no proof about that Exodus, that it never really happened. So suggesting that there really was no Exodus at all. It just didn't happen. I said, okay, fair enough. I said, you know what? I'm going to look into this. So I go look into this a little bit. And I watched a couple hours worth of videos. And it's literally a rabbit hole. And the battle isn't if it happened that I've seen so far. I mean, there's this dude called David A. Falk. Falk. You talk about a scholar. He's an Egyptologist, and he's a Christian. You talk about the most knowledgeable Bible person ever. I literally wrote this dude a message on Facebook, said, hey man, please mentor me and take me under your academic and theological wing, because you're arguably, possibly the most brilliant something mind ever, because dude knows everything about all contexts, about every detailed timeline, chronologically, archaeologically. He knows everything about his Bible. And he's a Christian. So what I noticed is that archaeologists and historians and stuff like that, when it comes to the Exodus, it's not a debate whether it happened or not. It's a debate about when it happened. Okay? So I say to myself that one guy's saying it happened 13th century, one guy said it happened 15th century. Okay, based upon idioms, which is basically a general span of time. I'm learning too, y'all. And temple inscriptions and dynasties and stuff like that. All this stuff has to be considered, and genealogies and stuff like that. All this stuff has to be considered when you're making. So in other words, okay, he pointed out some discrepancies in the Bible where, now he's in full defense of the Bible, but it's a timeline discrepancy. he pointed out in the Bible how one dude was telling a story in the Bible. He was telling a story, but he had his facts wrong. Okay. So the point is that somebody that was in the Bible was talking about something in the Bible, and he had his stuff off. He was saying stuff that wasn't on point. Like he had the name of a god wrong. He had the theology wrong about their God, about a different people's God, the Ammonites or the Amorites. So the point is that it's not about whether the Exodus happened or not. To discredit the Bible, it's a timeline discrepancy in the Bible and retrojections and stuff like that. Okay. Because by the time these folks wrote the book, stuff had already happened. You know, like for example, they said in the word Genesis, you see the word Pharaoh a few times. And you know, Pharaoh didn't even actually come into existence, the word, until later. So the point is that you're gonna have stuff that's off. Okay. But because, you know, by the time they wrote the book, stuff exists that didn't exist at the time the book actually took place. I mean, the story took place, but the book was written later. For the most part. I mean, in a lot of areas. So I'm learning too. But, so I say to myself, okay, these are both doctors. These guys. One's an archaeologist, one's an Egyptologist. They're both Christians. Okay. So, you talk about the most learned minds ever. Learned minds. So I take a step back. I'm still listening to what he said about, you know, there's really no evidence for the Exodus. I said, hold on, this dude's position had to be way off. Because, okay, it's not about whether the Exodus happened or not. It's about when it happened. Okay. So when I see that type of stuff going on, I see people arguing within the context of it happening, not whether it happened or not. For one, that tells me he was way off. It actually did happen. It's not about whether it happened or not. It's about when it happened. Okay. So when I see a lot of that, that tells me, okay, it did happen. It's not about whether or not it happened or not. It's whether it did happen. Okay, so you may have details that are off in the Bible. You know, somebody's recanting stuff, or somebody is telling a story. Somebody's writing a story and they have the details off. But whether or not the Bible is a document with some chronological stuff that's off does not dismiss the whole Bible. That's a dead issue. That's a dead issue that the Bible is off. I mean, the Bible is not true. Yeah, there's some chronological issues based upon, you know, generalized stuff and idioms and timelines. But the story still rings true 95% of the way through. So he still believes in Bible inerrancy. You know, even though there's some chronological differences, the Bible story still rings true as far as going back to Adam and Eve and stuff like that. That all rings true in the Red Sea parting and stuff like that. All that stuff still rings true in Noah's Ark, and I'm looking into it. I didn't read the Noah's Ark thing, but don't just sit here and tell me that the Exodus didn't happen based upon your evidence. And that's a solid foundation. So as far as the Bible not being true, as far as a historical thing, there's some timeline issues, but the message still rings true. Okay, the Jews came out of Egypt, out of slavery. They went to the wilderness. They had the tent of meeting. You know, Moses getting the 10 Commandments, all that stuff rings solid true. Okay, solid true. And I'm still researching. But I've taken it upon me to research the grittiest topics. And somebody told me, hey man, that's a rabbit hole, you better watch out. I'm in the trenches, y'all. I gotta know the stuff. Because it's not about whether the Bible is true. You can't say, okay, they're having disagreements. They're not seeing stuff. I mean, they're not. And most of the disagreements is based around judges and kings and stuff like that. Well, a lot of the timelines and stuff is based upon that. A lot of the disagreements. It's not about whether or not it happened or not. Because if that was the case, they wouldn't be wasting their time looking into it. Like, this really happened. You really have artifacts and stuff like that that really show this stuff happened. Okay, so I just want to throw that up. That it wasn't about whether or not they left the Exodus, whether or not that happened. Which, as the dude I was talking to proposed, he said there's really no evidence that there even was an Exodus. That never happened. And I go look at the most learned minds of that time, and I'm still looking. I'll look at everything. And dude told me, I learned, as you do a methodology about learning about stuff and fact check, you have to look at what was the word he used? Something factual. I want to say you have to look at all the opposing stuff too. You can't just cherry pick stuff and say, hey, that works. He said you have to do post-factual, something factual. I want to say it was defactual or post-factual. You have to look at the negative stuff too against your claim. You have to look at all the negative stuff too, and that's what I do. So don't sit here and tell me that I'm not doing my research. But to sit here and tell me, and I'm still looking. I'll look at any video you want me to see, but what I said was give a place for an opposing argument. Don't just throw me a video or a line of thinking or an ideology and just drop it and walk away. That's not how science and theology works. In academia, everything is allowed a challenge. Okay. So he laid out very clearly, and dude just blew away, buddy. He was so weak in his department, his career had to be ended. So this Bible has not been historically debunked. That is not the case. It's not about whether or not this stuff happened. It's about timeline, chronology, debates and stuff like that. It's not about whether or not it happened. Okay, that's not what it's about. And I didn't want to get too into this, but I just have to let y'all know as I'm studying what's happening. I have no concern about watching regular TV. I have no concern about stuff like that. If my mind isn't taking in food, I'm not living. Okay, I don't have a brain. I don't have nothing if I'm not taking in information that means anything. Even if it's just an intelligent conversation, a debate, I want to see who's got their knife sharpened. I want to see who's more prepared. And it's not just a battle of words. Yeah, there's tactics in a debate, but at the end of the day, even a party that doesn't have, and that's what's going on in the atheist department, they're more sharpened on the verbal side. In the verbal side, there's more of a technique. It's not really about evidence. It's more of a sparring technique in far as these verbal debates, it's not really about evidence. But when you get somebody who's got the verbals down, the research down, and they have their stuff down as far as research in academia, when they have that down, it kills everything. So that's my goal, man, because at the end of the day, and I still have work to do, at the end of the day, the Bible stands secure. He said, well, there's no evidence biologically that the world could have sustained itself through the Noah's Ark based upon biology, that this couldn't happen based upon that. I said, okay, fair enough. I'll go look into it. And, I've heard these arguments before. The ark couldn't never happen, la, 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 la. It's just not possible based upon the gene pool and this and that. It just couldn't happen. I said, okay, I'm going to look into that too. So the first thing he told me to go look at was the Exodus, that it never happened. There's no evidence for them. There's no chariots in the ocean. There's really no evidence for that happening. I said, okay. Well, I'm going to go look into it. And when I go look, okay, from a more intuitive standpoint, when you see people arguing about a topic, but the topic isn't about whether or not it happened. They're two doctors, our archaeologist, historian, Egyptologist, and they have a moderator there. So the topic was or not, it's a 2-hour long video. And I'll tell you the video. I really don't want to tell you the video because dude really got wasted. Dude got slapped out in the debate. And it was embarrassing. He barely knew anything about his topic. He was basically just running with the original text and taking it as face value. And the other guy was saying, no, it actually happened at a later date. They just had the timeline off. So somebody along the line drew a wrong conclusion when they were writing it. And doesn't take away from the message of the Bible, which is the first thing atheists want to say. Oh, there's discrepancy. Oh, throw the whole thing out. Nope, it's not going to work. Told you guys it was wrong. There's a timeline discrepancy. Throw it out. That's how that works. One timeline discrepancy. One detail, that's all. One person lying in the book. If you have a character telling a story that's got his facts wrong, but he's still speaking, guess what? The Bible's still recording what he said. Okay, doesn't mean that there wasn't a dude there telling his story. If somebody lies in the Bible, it doesn't mean the Bible is lying. It means somebody lied in the Bible. Okay, that makes any sense. Or somebody was wrong in the Bible. It doesn't mean the Bible is wrong. If somebody was speaking in the Bible and they had their facts off, that doesn't mean the Bible is a fraud because somebody in the Bible was lying. Okay, if somebody in the Bible was speaking that said some wrong stuff, or even yeah, you see what I'm saying? So it's a slippery slope argument to say. Okay, there's an error. We found it. It's a discrepancy. Throw it out. That is a extremely slippery slope. It's still a historical document, and not to mention inspired word of God. As far as like moral stuff and stuff like that, the chronological stuff really isn't really an issue. It's the fact that the main points have been made. Okay? So if you have marks on a wall, if you have a child growing up, and you tell them to stand on a wall, boom, put their little height, you make a mark. Okay, later on, you make a mark, boom. Okay, next year or two, you make a mark. Not really on those set days. Okay, you just make a mark to show they're growing up, and you have fun. You laugh about it. Oh, look how tall I am! I'm so much taller than I am then. You know, it's not about whether or not. You can't sit there and tell me that ain't a true story. That person was really that tall. We made a mark there. Now they're this tall. We made a mark here. So it's not about whether or not that happened or not. It's about a chronological issue, which really. So you can't say, well, you know what? I don't believe that was you. I don't believe you were there. You know what? You're not even real. But that's what happened in the slippery slope argument, is they just throw out everything based upon some chronological discrepancies or some title discrepancy or something like that. Or error, if there's an error in the Bible, somebody was lying in the Bible, or somebody had their facts wrong in the Bible, or maybe a scribe had some facts wrong, doesn't tear down the whole story. That's my point. Okay. So I'm looking. All the toughest subjects. I want to see it. I want to see all the toughest subjects, all the toughest videos. Don't send me a video about one dude. I want to see an open discussion. I want to see an open debate about a topic. Not one dude behind the documentary with all these cool effects and dramatic stuff where they have all the wind in the world. And you know what happens, guys, is, and it gets crazy, is you'll have a debate. Okay. Then you'll have people that were in the debate making a video commentating on the debate. It gets crazy. I know. It's a rabbit hole. I said, wow, how far does this stuff go? Okay, you could tell he made the video. I don't know why he made the video, because he just smashed Buddy. Buddy was their weakest opponent ever. So when does it become not about being right? I said to myself, okay. I said, okay, what does this gain either position by being right? As far as Christianity goes, what does it gain either position? Is it just about being right? What about Christ? What does it matter who's right if it's really not affecting? I understand that you're right, but at the end of the day, you just ruined this man's career. And how does this further or not further scriptural integrity? How does this further the Christian outlook? Okay, that's what I'm asking myself, because it seems at the end of the day, it's just about being right. You're patting yourself on the back. You just ruined this man's career. But how does this further biblical integrity? That's what I'm asking myself, and that's beyond me. That's just me with my broad scope of looking at stuff. I said, if he's right or you're right about the timeline, how does that affect Bible? And I think that should have been addressed. It's, at least he should have addressed that, but he didn't. It was all about, I'm right. It is important which one's right, and it is important. I get that, but I wanted him to address that it really doesn't affect Bible integrity, or maybe it does. But that's an important point. How does this stuff reinforce Bible integrity? Or what does this do to Bible integrity, and how does either one... how does either one do to Christianity as a whole? And he just dissected everything. He said the moderator was biased. He said everything. I recommend you guys go look at it. It's David A. Falk. Falk. Okay. He had a debate with another doctor. I'm sure it'll pop up. But he made a commentary that says uncensored or censored, because they tried to let him put it out, and that happens a lot. Okay. But nowadays, you can't just go in and say, "Oh, I take the Bible at its word." I mean, you'll do well by doing that, but not in the debate stance. So he starts off by saying, "But here's what I was trying to say. The message is the message I gather from all his there's not even a word for it. To say intense and to say that thorough was his academic work involving the Bible and its historicity and his methodology. To say that it's thorough and immersive would be an understatement. I'm blown away and fascinated. I love that kind of stuff, to see someone thorough and to see someone who's well versed and to see someone who knows their stuff. So what I take away from that is that the truth is out there. This stuff really happened. It's not about whether or not the Exodus happened, like Buddy was saying, because I knew I was in a safe spot. It's not about whether the Exodus happened. It's about when it happened. Okay, so another win for Preach Facts, man. But okay, so what I was trying to say was that I had to stay grounded. Okay, how far is this line of thinking? How far is this research? Is this going to hurt my faith or strengthen it? It strengthened it, because it's not just a story that you have to believe. The truth is out there. The people are out there that know their history. They know their Bible. They know their archaeology. They know that the truth is out there. You just haven't found the right stuff. David A. Falk, F-A-L-K, an Egyptologist, a Christian, the most intelligent guy I've ever seen, period. As far as just academia and I said, bro, you need to go on Jeopardy, man. But I reached out to him. I said, take me under your wing, man. You're brilliant. You know, you really have your stuff down. And he knows his stuff. He knows the Jews were in Egypt. He knows you have real stuff behind this. End of story, man. It's just out there. It's just facts. So don't tell me the Exodus didn't happen. You know, and so what happens is the atheists, or the whatever you want to call them, the people that are just throwing stuff and dismissing the Bible, they throw stuff out there. Okay, with no really solid backing. I'm learning about this debate stuff. It's called Gish Gallop. I'm learning that a Gish Gallop is when you throw a series of shallow arguments out there in an attempt to overwhelm with a series of shallow arguments. Basically, they're unverifiable. It's just stuff you're just throwing out there. That's what happens. They say, okay, what about this? What about the ark? What about this? What about the Exodus? What about this, and this? That is a Gish Gallop. Then when you're throwing stuff out, I'm learning. If you can't back your stuff up, don't throw it out there. End of story. There's stuff backing all of this stuff. Period. And my next project is going to be, because I want to know it all, man. The truth is out there, y'all. Y'all just don't have the time or the capacity to take it in without your ADD taking hold of you, and you can't even sit down and watch a video with any interest. I'm riveted. I'm interested. I want to see, because my life is on the line. But when it comes down to a chronology issue, But as far as the Jews coming out of Egypt and abandoning Egypt, that's verifiable stuff. That really happened. Okay? That really happened. And end of story. That really happened. And I'm not done looking. But I guarantee you, some of these guys that say this stuff, they're going to be saying it solo. The bad stuff. They're going to be saying stuff solo behind cameras. They're not going to bring their case against a real academic in an open forum because they know they'll get crushed and their career will be over. Okay. And I don't give much props to him for making the... he's all right, but at the end of the day, you need to say that... hey, yeah, I was right. I had my timeline is more substantiated. And I've shown that yours is less substantiated. You know, I see what you're saying, but you don't have to clout. You don't have to clout over the man. You know, okay, you won. Don't ruin the man's career. But he does have a point. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about that one. But the point is that anybody can just throw stuff out there. But some people do know their stuff. And the Exodus is verifiable. It happened. It's not about whether it happened or not. It's about when it happened. Okay? So don't run to the slippery slope and say, okay, there's a discrepancy. I don't believe, let's just throw it out altogether. Matter of fact, throw the whole Bible out. That's how that works. That is a slippery slope. A biased, slippery slope. And when you look at he described his methodology. He said, how did you arrive at that conclusion? He just tore him apart. How did you arrive at that? And when he kept asking him, dude had no answer. He had no answer. He had a lot of stuff wrong. He had a lot of stuff wrong about documents and stuff. And who recognizes the documents in modern day times? Who recognizes these references? And that's how that works. In the modern day area, people aren't going to stand behind stuff that's not solid. Recognized academia, historians, and archaeologists. People aren't going to stand behind stuff that's not solid. So he always referencing all of these modern day archaeologists and their reports that were released in 2020 and this and that. Okay, in support of or not in support of that's recognized stuff. He said, yeah, well, you know, according to this and that. He said, no, you just reference this, but that's not the case. That's not the case. That didn't occur in this text. And now hold on, and he just tore everything apart. Now, mind you, the original guy, I mean, the dude that lost, he was referencing Bible straight. He was taking the Bible at his word. Okay. So he really wasn't wrong in a sense. He took the Bible at his word. But dude showed him that the timeline was off. It was an idiom. It wasn't really off. It was a generalized timeline to make other stuff fit. So it was more like a adjusted time frame. So by allowing a more advanced look into the text, and I can't say either one was right or wrong. All I know is dude had his stuff together, okay? By allowing this, but my point is that chronological differences and stuff like that is not a deal breaker for Bible integrity. because you're dealing with a lot of stuff. You're dealing with dynasties. You're dealing with different cultures. You're dealing with scribes. You're dealing with translations. You're dealing with thousands of years when technology wasn't around. You're dealing with a lot of issues that take place in for there to be potential errors. You're dealing with a lot of this stuff. Okay, when you're dealing with all that, stuff can happen. It does happen. So, and you know, stuff happens. It's not everything, but the point is that the stuff rings true. It really happened. You know, they really were in the desert. They really had the tent of meeting. You know, they really had all this stuff. So I'm looking into it. So I'm looking into it. And I was not going to do my regular study today. We'll read a couple verses, but I have to keep y'all posted about the updates about stuff. Dude told me the Exodus didn't happen. He said there's no evidence for that. That's just, and I'm sure there's videos out there saying that. He said there's really no evidence for that. It's just another. The Bible's not true. You can't trust it. Look at Noah's Ark. It can't happen based upon this, and this. So I'm gonna go look into Noah's Ark next. Okay, I'm gonna look into that next. I've already see stuff supporting that. But I have to ask myself. But in order to be in this arena, y'all, this arena of debates and atheists, because I'd like to be in a place where I could really further the kingdom by knowing enough of my stuff and enough of my references to really defend the faith. And as of right now, it looks really attainable. I'd like to be in a place where I can openly defend the faith to further the kingdom. That's the goal. It's not about me being smart. It's not about me winning a debate. It's not about me being right. I am right so far. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Show me the evidence. Show me the evidence. Bring me to reality. But don't show me a bunch of stuff that couldn't work out, because God is supernatural. God will break any type of, if he can raise somebody from the dead, he can part a Red Sea. And he can make something from nothing. So don't show me a bunch of facts and tell me that it's not possible. That's what I'm saying. So you have to allow, and that's not a slippery slope, an escape route. That's not what that is. This is just how God works. All right, so you know, they try to act like we just pivot every time we can and well, you know, that doesn't work for me, so I'm just running to the supernatural thing. No. That's not how that works. That's not what we're doing. We're trying to find truth. But don't show me a logic and a law and throw out the whole Bible because there's a supernatural element to it. That's not a slippery slope. That is a Bible claim. Okay, so if there's chronological errors in the Bible, if there's people in the Bible that told a wrong story, told without the facts correct or way off, it does not dismiss the whole story. Okay? That's not how that works. And when they told me the Exodus didn't happen, it wasn't about whether or not it happened or not, according to historians and archaeologists. It was about when it happened. Both of them believed it happened. Both of them stood behind it happening. It was just a 200-year difference in their chronology. 13th century is an early Exodus, and one was a 15th century Exodus. which is a big difference. I get it, but both of them stood behind the Exodus. It wasn't about whether or not it happened. And anytime you see a lot of controversy about an issue, it's not about whether or not the issue happened. That was never the case. It was about when it happened, which further substantiates the claim that they're not fighting about, neither one of them contended that it didn't happen. They were just talking about when it happened. They were both fully in support of it happening. It had evidence out the yin yang to find it. To support it. Okay. So guys, I'm gonna let y'all go for the day. We're in 45 still. I just had to let y'all know about that update. I'm undertaking a more rabbit hole type of stuff. At the same time, I'm learning about debates and stuff. It's a gish gallop, because at the end of the day, that's what we're up against. We're up against spiritual stuff, debates, tactics, language, idioms. At the end of the day, that's what we're really up against: information. We're up against the war of information. It's been going on since the Garden of Eden. So I'm not wrong by going down rabbit holes and hearing different stuff, as long as I keep myself centered. Because you have to know your stuff. You have to know your Bible scholarship if you're going to defend the Christ in all arenas. So I'm working on it, guys. We're doing good. It's not all just Bible reading here. We're in the trenches. We're really hitting the gritty areas, the toughest areas, so that we can defend our faith properly in this age of information. Because what happens is, when you're talking to an atheist, they're going to maneuver through tactics and words without even addressing the topic. And in doing so, tear down your confidence and ruin your faith, because you don't have the right tactics and maneuvers and practice about your speech and your grammar and your layout. I'm not standing for that. I want to know my stuff. When Jesus was around, he was the most eloquent. He killed all debates. Everybody was baffled and astonished. He had the authority. And I think I'm going into it's a spiritual realm, this whole oratory and debate thing. It is a spiritual thing. If you can be accomplished in that area, I believe you're really doing something. Okay, so let me keep on what I'm doing, and doing my research. I have to do my regular job too, but I'm really into this. So I'm reaching out to these academic people. I'm reaching out personally, asking them to mentor me, some of these more accomplished guys, asking them to mentor me about stuff so that I can literally be more involved, and I can say, hey, buddy, what's going on with this? What do you think about that? What do you think about the ark? What do you think about this? What do you think about Bible inerrancy? And he stands behind Bible inerrancy, which means it's really true. So you can't dismiss the Bible, period. End of story, guys. And I'm kind of rambling now, but we did good. It's a big topic. So I'm bringing this to the lay people. And that just means common people. I'm trying to bring the message to the common people. Because what happens is, if you don't watch your details, they say the Bible's not real, blah, 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 blah. And a lot of people take that at face value because they haven't really done their research. So I'm bringing the message to the common person. And that's me too. I'm getting my feet wet into this nitty gritty stuff. I'm bringing the message to the common people that it's not true. The Bible is still true. End of story. The Bible is still true and verifiable, and it's not wrong at all. The story rings true. It's not about chronological stuff, even though there's some chronological discrepancies, and even some, names and titles, and even some other stuff that may not be right, or it's not right. There may be some stuff in there like that, and there is, but that doesn't take away from the integrity of the Bible. That is a slippery slope. That is a slippery slope. It does not take away from the main message that the Jews came out of the Exodus through the Red Sea. They came out, and they got there by Abraham and Joseph, and all that. They got there by that. They came out. They went to the tent of the meeting. They got the 10 Commandments, and on down the line, and David, and on down the line, they get to the Christ. That's the message, and the Christ resurrected. That is all factual stuff. End of story. The little details they get hung up on trying to throw out the whole book. It's not working. It's not working. It's not working. It's not working. All those points that I just made to you are facts. The ark, Noah, all that stuff is facts. Every supernatural thing in this book really happened. Okay, so we're going to look into this further and see what happens. Okay, I'll give you more updates as we go. Have a good day, y'all. We're on YouTube at Preach Facts, and we're on TikTok at Preach Facts 7. I hope I brought some clarity to this situation. I'm still working on it, but it's not about whether the Exodus happened or not through the Red Sea. It's about when it happened. Thank you. Have a good day.